let's start working with nodes. And we're going to set up a basic color correction for this clip, and we're going to throw a LUT on it just for you to see how that works. Now, when I work with nodes, I want to work with the waveform monitor. Now, to activate that, I'm going to click on this button here, and that's going to turn on the histogram. You may notice that the histogram has color in it. I'm going to click on this little drop down window here, and I'm going to click on the Y, and that's going to show me just luminance value. If you're seeing one of these other scopes, just select the waveform from it. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to this node, this one node, and I'm going to right click and choose node label, and I'm going to type in caps exp/SAT because that's just my own preference. I'll do both exposure and saturation in this particular node before going on to another one. And I'm clicking the little button to expand it out, and you can see that it shows 4 of them by default. If I click on this little button in the upper right of that window, it becomes just the waveform monitor itself. And I'm just making this larger for you to be able to see. So as I watch the scope, I watch the image on the video. I'm going to go ahead and close this window, the LUTs window, and I'm going to come over to the wheels. As I look at the scope, I can see that it is pushed up quite high in the exposure range. So I'm going to go to the lift or the shadow area, and I'm going to click on the wheel below the colored wheel, this one right here, and I'm going to start dragging that down until those shadow areas, or the bottom part of the waveform, starts moving towards 0. And as you can see, that's changed the characteristics of that image. Now I'm going to jump up to the gain or the highlights, and I'm going to slide up, and I'm going to bring that up near 1023. And I'm going to come back down and drag the shadow area down a little bit, being careful that I don't go below 0 unless I intend to. There's reasons why you might want to do that. Now we'll come to the gamma or the midtones, and I'm going to just move that back and forth so you can see what impact it has, and adjust that until it has the look and feel that I want. And so now I've adjusted the exposure for this clip in this first node. And let's take a look and see if we want to add some saturation. I'm going to go ahead and close the waveform window, but still reactivate it down here so I can see what's going on there. And I'm going to come down to below the wheels, and you'll see we have contrast, pivot, sat, hue, lume mix. The one we're going to worry about right now is saturation. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to increase that until it has the look that I remember it having when I was taking this shot. And so I've set a saturation level of 81.60. And so that's an example of doing a basic color correction. Now we could try to set a white balance. If we're not happy with the look and feel, we could go into the wheels and play with those. But again, for this example, I'm going to keep it very simple and straightforward. Now the next thing I'm going to show you is a way to create multiple versions of a clip. So if I go to this clip and I right click on it and I go to the very top, you'll see local versions, create new version. Well, we'll just leave it as version 2. Keep it simple. You could name it something else if you wanted. And so now you'll notice that underneath that clip, we're now showing the version number. If I double click on that, so this is file name, this is the version number, and this is telling me the codec that it was recorded in. I'm going to click through again until I get to version number. So now we've created version 2, and in this version, I'm going to add another node. I can right click on the existing node, and I can go to add node, and we want to add a serial node. I'm going to right click on it and choose node label, and I'm going to type LUT, and now I'm going to go over to the LUTs button. I'm going to click it, toggle it on. I'm going to select my DJI LUTs and I'm going to see what that looks like. Well, that looks really strong to me. We're going to double click it to apply it to that node. And then we're going to come down to this window here, the key output, and we're going to click on gain, and we're going to click our mouse button dragging to the left, and we're going to reduce that down to where it looks more like what I shot when I was out there. And you can see that by taking it down to 234, I'm applying the LUT at a much less intense level. Now I'm going to come back to exposure and saturation, and I'm going to dial back the saturation to about there. Then come up to the bypass color grade button right here. That's before and that's after. To turn a node off and on, I'm going to click on the label and I'm going to deactivate it. Notice how it goes dark, and then I'm going to reactivate it. So that's an example of using a LUT after you've set your basic exposure and saturation. I'm also going to look down at the waveform monitor and make sure that I'm not above 1023 or below 0. Now let's add another node, and we're going to apply one of the library OpenFX plugins. So this time I'm going to select LUT because I want to add the serial node after this. And from the keyboard, I'm going to press an Option or Alt key S, and that's going to place a serial node after the LUT. I'm going to right click on it, choose Node Label, choose Watercolor. I'm going to come over to the library. If you don't have it open or if you're in settings, select the library and do make sure that you're showing all. We're going to scroll down until we find Stylize, and we're going to choose Watercolor. Now there's two ways to add these. I can create the node and I can drag and drop it onto it. But let me go ahead and delete this. I'm going to go ahead and right click on it, delete the node. Another way to add it is to click on Watercolor and drag it onto the line after LUT until I get the little plus sign, and I'll let go. And that's now added the watercolor for me. And as you can see, that has applied that look to that original clip. I can affect the blend of it by coming down to the global blend, and I'm going to slide it to the right. I could also click in the box if I wanted to, and I'm going to blend back more of the original into it so it's not quite so heavy. So that's with it off, and that's with it on. With this particular plugin, we can select Show Gradient. It'll look like that, and then we can come over to the smoothness slider using this level of smoothness. That's full, and that's about what I want. I'll turn off Show Gradient, and now we've got the smoothness and the global blend of that applied. And I just did a Command or Control S to save. To compare the two versions, I can come over here to this button, this split screen, and you can see the original. If I double click on it, that will select that and show me what nodes are associated with it here on the right. Double click it again, and that will show me the nodes that are associated with that particular one. If I click on it again, we now have the version 2, and you can verify that by coming down and looking at the clip and look below it and see that it's version 2. If we wanted to reload version 1, we'd right click, go to version 1 and load, and now that's going to get us back to the first version. Now let's add a node that has sharpening associated with it. Let's go up to exposure saturation on version 1. And you'll notice when I put my cursor over it, it tells me a list of the things that that node contains. From the keyboard, I'm going to do an Alt or Option S to add a node. I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose node label, and I'm going to type sharpened. Now go down to what looks like a little water drop. This is not only blur. When we click on it, you can come over to the right here and choose sharpen. And I found from someplace between 45 and 47 is enough sharpening for most of the work that I do. So now we have a sharpened video, as well as one that has the exposure and saturation set.